very, very cheap, extremely cheap. In fact, even if you have to pay for some of the courses, I would like to tell all the participants here that do not miss this opportunity, because you don't get such kind of courses so cheap in the market. And yeah, so thanks again, Nikhil, for inviting me for kickstarting the first anniversary of PEA. Pardon me for sometimes I'll be coughing because I'm not having a very clear throat now. That's why I'm having some hot water. So what I thought is that pandemic has caused havoc in the world, and it has affected each and every one of us. Lots of lives have lost, lots of jobs have been lost, lots of people have gone through very extreme hardships. Families have gone through that as well, and how it has impacted everyday life in the industry. There is it's not just socially or personally, people have lost a lot of things. Industry also has lost a lot of opportunities, but industry doesn't stop there. It always adjusts. It has a sponge to take such kind of impacts, and it just reorients itself. The operating companies, they have developed different kind of thought process, different kind of strategies, and also the service sectors, which are providing extreme services, good quality services to the upstream organizations like operators. They have also readjusted themselves. They have kind of realigned themselves. And by when I go through these slides, you'll see how uh, technology plays a big role in this realignment. So let's start with this. And pardon me again. So my some of the key features in this talk will be to let you, most of you probably are aware who are already working. There are certain issues which I'll be talking through, some policies and technical challenges, how operator companies are adapting to through various kind of strategic solutions, what sort of gray areas where the technology can help in optimization, and some amount of research and development part of it also I'll be talking about. So some of the slides as I go about probably will not have a direct link to the optimization, but I'm just going to build up the scenario on that. And okay. Some of the issues which are very broad in general, and which is the impact of the low oil price along with the pandemic, which has caused like travel restrictions, the office attendance restrictions, many things have happened. So it has impacted industry wide. It's not just oil and gas, it has impacted every industry. Forecast, as you can see, yes, Brent is running at 70, but on average it is about 60 barrels, $60 a barrel, and that's where we have achieved. But there is some story behind how it is able to maintain that kind of a price range, is through the cut in the production that has been implemented for a long time by OPEC countries. Job impacts, economic slowdown has kind of, it's snowballed through job impacts, because if people lose job, there is less of floating money. So it impacts the consumers, the business consumer industry, everywhere it has an impact. Earlier, you used to see that people in the industry were traveling, for work or meetings, things like that, that has kind of almost zero. I mean, very, very negligible business related travel is happening nowadays. Everything is work from home, meetings from home, webinars, lots of travels are cut. So the travel industry is affected, but that's also causing higher savings for the people because people are not spending so much money and people are kind of looking at having more of a savings component for a rainy day. You never know. IOCs, which is international oil companies, and the national oil company budget, they have been impacted because it's the operator company which reduces the budget. So automatically the service sector also has to realign. So their revenues are not anymore the way it used to be or the way the forecast was made. So there is a prioritization happening. Manpower reduction is happening quite a bit, which is not a good scene. But we hope things will clear up soon and uh, industry will be back again in 1 or 2 years' time. So these are the like sharp fall in demand, which I've already spoken about. We are not very sure that whether the 2019 or pre-2019 demand would be ever restored back, and accordingly, the investments also will never be back to that 2019 situation. But we are going there. I'll show you some plots later on. We are going there and slowly, slowly. Next is about some of the quotes from the agencies like McKinsey or international energy agencies. These some of the things which as I highlighted. Liquid demand is likely to recover to 2000 levels, 19 levels by one more year. That's what their prediction is. And the prediction is always with an assumption that this COVID we are able to control with the vaccines and there is no more new strain coming up. So, which nobody knows. So, it's like a projection made on a simulation model. Oil investments are expected to be recovering slowly but steadily, but it will still remain below the 2019 level. And if there is no major kind of a shift other than the normal renewable energy sectors contributions, then by 2040, we need to add 38 million barrels per day of production to sustain the world energy. And that is a big, big amount. So where will that come from? There has to be oil and gas industry has to run, it has to explore, it has to add reserves, it has to develop. Well, at the same time, if you look at the International Energy Agency, you see the carbon dioxide emissions as soon as the COVID, the first phase of the COVID was kind of controlled, it has reached back by 5% in 2021. It is like 5% jump, approaching to the 2018-19 peak. Now look at the scenario in we have reduced the transportation, on surface transportation quite a bit in the past 1 year. Why is it still growing so fast back, carbon dioxide? So is it always right to blame the oil and gas industry as the biggest contributor? Probably not. Probably not. There are many other industries which are contributing a lot on that. Oil-related emissions are expected to recover only about half of the 2020 drop, and that should remain 500 metric ton carbon dioxide below 2019. Still, it will be less than 2019. Renewable electricity generation is set to expand by 8%. If you are expanding by 8%, you can see that another 5 years down the line, you can see a lot of electrical vehicles, electronic vehicles, and self-driven cars. But how much is it going to, or some of the townships' energy requirements like heating or cooling or lighting up? These are the areas that renewable electricity can actually contribute, and that's most welcome. But still, a major chunk, about 80%, 85% will be depending on the oil and gas. So there is no negative outlook for oil and gas. That's what I'm trying to say. So predictions and the forecast, this is basically whatever I've spoken to you, this absolutely is summarized here. So not considering net zero from oil and gas producers and dictated by court, these are certain elements which are very recently happening. Courts are advising or telling the companies to get into net zero carbon emission. Okay, so, and I'll come to another slide with some depictions there. OPEC's cut continues to keep the price jacked up. That's another assumption. Industrial activities will be back to 2019. Job opportunities definitely will come up again because more work, more jobs straight away. Vaccine percentage, if you look at it, it's just 25% of the global population. So still we have 75% of the vaccine requirement to be taken care of. And that can take a long time. And who knows by that time whether these vaccines are going to be effective or some more new vaccines have to be generated. So lots of ifs and buts are there. I am not an anti renewable energy person, but there are certain things people, especially the activists, the climate activists, they do not tell to the world is that what are the footprints of you? This is the panels. You see how much of the green has been destroyed by renewable energy. Rather, once you start producing from a field, most of the companies actually plant trees there. And we have generated, the oil companies have generated much more green than these renewables. So their energy is clean, but everything behind them is dirty. So if you look at this, global warming was there in the geologic past, much before oil and gas came in. It's a natural phenomenon. There are a lot of biological, marine kind of organic activities which also release a lot of carbon dioxide. Renewables definitely leave a huge footprint, and renewables are not really the devices. They are not like environment friendly in the devices itself. The energy is cool, but the devices are not. So at this point, the non-renewable, the devices are the machines and equipments and everything is short-lived, and they are non-renewable and non-recyclable. So I hope the renewable energy industry kind of looks at these things and they improve upon their technologies, especially to get these things in non-recyclable mode. Yeah, this is exactly what I was telling you about the court directing some of the recent happenings which has happened from the International Court in Hague, in Netherlands, is that E&P industry, major companies, based on that, they have suddenly switched gears. Just today's news, I think ExxonMobil has some of the lobby has removed top people there to instill their own people to shift ExxonMobil somewhere upside, somewhere middle and upside, which is actually, which should probably be done also, because these are the companies which can contribute a lot in renewable energy. And while at the same time to run the business or feed the renewable energy efforts, they have to run the oil and gas. But look at BP here. Can you see my, I'm not getting those pointers, but if you can see the arrow, the number 4 is BP here, and this is ENP deprioritized. So ENP is on the reducing side here. ENP as the core, new energy expansion plans on the top, new energy expansion plan at the bottom. So BP is speaking about going into the new energy component rather than keeping ENP as the very, very low level or maybe just dying out. Is it possible for a BP? I mean, you people have been in the industry or going to join industry. British Petroleum, some of the major assets are in oil and gas. How would they do that? So is it a reflection of the court rulings? We don't know. Now, if you see in the mid part on the where energy ENP is kept very low, but high investments are seen in the new energy component. Is one of the company is Repsol. Repsol is a Spanish company which has 150 million barrel reserves. And if you produce that reserve, Saudi Arabia will produce that in 10 to 12 years, 10 to 12 days, sorry. So that is the only amount of reserves that they hold. So for them, it is easy to go in the new energy way while keeping a low profile on the ENP. And many of their ENP business is outside the Europe. Total has a very balanced approach. It's taking ENP as high as new energy, both components. So that's a very balanced approach. ExxonMobil is not looking at the new energy at this moment. They have their reasons, but shortly that might change. That may also move somewhere here. The basic, I mean, to cut the whole story short, is that there is a drive into the ENP companies to get into the new energy business. So those engineers, especially, probably you can also look at a career which is little diverted into the new energy sector. So that's one thing which translates that in going forward in 5 to 10 years, definitely that is one area which will be thriving, and there will be support from the companies. There are a lot of companies will come up. Yeah. So from this curve, actually, it shows one thing: the dependency of the world on the Middle East oil will continue because there is no port here. There is no port which is going to direct that you cannot do ENP, you have to do renewables. No. So the world will be looking at the Middle East as their main component driver, Middle East and Africa, so which is shortly called as MENA region. So this is where the oil industry will be thriving and it will go. But the thing is, many of their major fields which are contributing are actually struggling with the water cut, huge water cuts. So how long, how much more they can do in a optimized way is something to be seen. Now this graph is also from British Petroleum, which looks at the previous slide. It shows that they're going to the renewable side much more. I mean, 90% they are going to focus on that and 10% on the ENP. Have a different kind of projections here, which kind of contradicts with their vision there. They look at, we still have huge amount of oil to be discovered, huge amount, and it is true. Actually, this curve is more authentic in the sense that it's factual. Many basins in the world are very less explored or not at all explored. And every sedimentary basin, given a certain parameter, has the potential to be providing hydrocarbon reserves. So what happens is the peak oil. Now, this is another term which comes up once in a while, and many times these are spoken since the last 20, 30 years. the peak oil is coming up in, I think the first one was said in 1995, and that prediction went flat because that's where the oil boom started off with the deep waters and all that coming in, gases, massive reservoirs have been discovered. So that didn't come. After that, almost 33% of the proved reserves, not the resource, proved reserves were added into the component. So the peak oil prediction, whatever they say, it's kind of getting delayed and delayed and delayed. So it's never seen a peak oil because you do not know how much you have left in there. So how can you say that there is a peak oil coming up? So that is something with a big question mark. And why people believe that, yeah, oil is going to, I mean, you will see the layman talking, oil will finish in 10, 20 years and something like that. Why? Because people do not understand, the laymen do not understand what is the proved reserves. The proved reserves, the unproved reserves of today may become proved reserves tomorrow because two factors control that. One is the economics, other one is the technology. So what proved reserves we have today is based on today's economics and today's technology. So going forward in 5 years, on 10 years, if the economic condition improves and the technology, I mean, supersedes whatever is today, is going to make those ones which are as possible reserves or probable reserves jump into the proved category. So we keep adding into the proved reserves. If you see the 30 years back, the technology of interpreting data on seismic has so far so much improved that you can never think of finding those smaller fields, but a number of them being detected in that age, say 30 years back. And now we are detecting those things with other associated informations, high resolution acquisition of different patterns, different technology being deployed, processing has improved so much. So we are able to now visualize things. We are able to go into the direct hydrocarbon indicators much more confidently than what we were doing 20 years back. So that is how, though the big structures are not much in today's world coming up, but there are few of them are coming up, especially from the less explored, which were earlier less explored and have been taken up on active exploration. They have added big structures, but otherwise small to medium structures keep happening, just keep being discovered. Recovery factor, once you change your economics and the technology, the recovery factor of today is 30%. It used to be some years back, it used to be like 20, 25, 30%. Now it has improved to 35%. So recovery factor also stands to improve. So that means we are producing much more reserves, able to produce. Discovery factor, which I spoke about, is because of the technology, this has been increasing. So a small percentage improvement of the recovery factor and the geological chance factor, these two combined, can add billions of barrels of oil more into the already established, how much proven reserves is about 1.7 billion barrels. So imagine if we are adding 20, 30 more, so the show is going to run on. It's never going to stop. Now coming to this, so what I am saying is that in the whole story, there is nothing depressing. Yes, we are going through some major crises, but these are short downhills and we have to go up again. So it will go up, but for this period, there has to be some kind of adjustment, and the adjustments are happening. We are seeing those adjustments in terms of economic fallout, large projects, and the technical impacts. These are the three areas, gray areas. What is happening because the economic fallout can happen in terms of the price of the oil. So no wonder that OPEC is producing less to keep the price up. Because if the price is higher, then there are many projects which cannot be taken up will come in for. So to run the business, they have to keep the price up, artificially jacked up. It's like an oxygen being given. So that there will be a drop in the budgets, in the capex and the opex. So action plan, what happens? A fallout of that is that the action plan will be reprioritized. Do I need it? No, not so much. That kind of thing. Large projects, billions of dollars worth of projects are being slowed down, kept on hold, except some small components being released just to keep it going, contractual obligations and such things, keep the things running, but they are on hold. That impacts the surface facilities like infield separators and GCs or processing units and the refinery units. These are the large projects where some kind of hold is going on. Reduction in the exploration, it's a technical impact, definitely, because I have oil. For some time, I will not be looking at exploring more. Rather, I should concentrate on the development of those reservoirs and produce more. So, but production is also like through the existing wells or add little bit of wells, not like hundreds of wells a year, maybe in tens and 20s and 30s, that kind of thing. So the rigs are curtailed. So it impacts the rig service companies and associated service providers. Data acquisition is compromised. So we may not be acquiring, what happens, it's something, it's like a situation where you have lots of food and you do not really care for the food. You keep eating them. Even if it is not needed, you keep eating them. But when the food scarcity comes in, you try to balance out. That do I need to eat today at this moment? Can I have it tomorrow? This is the scenario which is happening to the data acquisition. Do I need it? Really need it? If you need it, go ahead and do it. But if you do not, don't do it. Then there is a justification process which has been important. Why do you need it? What is the added value? So these are the process step changes which are happening, like sort of you can say a change management. So because of that, what happens is RRR, which is actually for the reserves replacement ratio. So I'm producing so much and I have to replace so much. Then only I'm at the static level, otherwise I'm on the downfall, right? So the targets that are being compromised, skilled expertise, that is what is happening, that lots of companies, because the skilled expertise are high value people and they're trying to get rid of them. But is that a good judgment or not? From my personal view, probably that is not the best judgment. But at the same time, the younger people, they also need to have their job going on. So probably some kind of alignment is happening, realignment is happening, whom to keep, whom not to keep. Or if I have 5 expertise, just get rid of 2 of them, 3 will run. This kind of things. So in brass tack, what happens is rethink, reorient, and reprioritize. So impact timeline. If I have 1 to 2 years of deploying some kind of investments, and then probably that is where people are going for, because that is short term. I mean, I invest some money today, and in next year or next to next year, I'm going to reap the benefit out of it. They go for it. So it's not that investment is for a long term period. Or go for optimized alternatives. There are lots of really good small developers, technology developers who are developing the products, and their price is definitely much cheaper than the big service companies. I don't have to name them. Their prices are much higher. So what is the alternative we have? So companies are looking at those alternatives. How much do I lose in resolution if I deploy the small companies' technology than the big ones? or is it the same? Why should I pay them so much money? You know, so must have and no alternative. This kind of uh, decision trees are being developed for investment purpose. So based on whatever I spoke for the last few minutes on few slides, what I am looking at personally, few of the things which are going to optimize the cost benefit analysis. I need to change my working pattern or thought pattern. So optimize the process. The process has to change. We are not going to be looking at the same copybook style of process, rather innovate that process. Relook at the old data. I mean, how often, I don't know, people who are in the industry, old data is barely been looked at. Very few people are looking at the old data. Old data, we have vast amount of data gathered at some point of time, maybe 10 years, 20 years back, and they host a lot of informations. Are we doing that? I mean, there are a lot of instances, reserves have been found to be behind the casings. The older logs, well logs, the resolution factors and all that was different. So it was never noticed that time. Now with technology development and tool development and the resolution development, things are becoming much brighter. So once you get in somewhere with the new technologies, then you open up the old data and look at whether the same thing could be correlated there. Do I have a potential which is lying behind the pipe, behind the cement? So review the missed segments. That's what it comes to. Automation is the change. I mean, we are in the probably the fifth industrial revolution now, and the automation is the fifth stage of the industrial revolution. So from Internet of Things to big data analytics, machine learning, artificial intelligence, these used to be much more common in consumer industry, where you have surface visible data points. But in the upstream industry, when the surface facilities change because of the subsurface, and the subsurface is the most important part of it. So the subsurface is something which we do not see, we comprehend. We have no direct informations coming out of the subsurface. It's the sensory data that we are seeing. Okay. Now, in that situation, what happens is it's a much more trickier, much more difficult to deploy blindly the machine learning and the AI. So here what happens is, for the subsurface industry or the upstream industry, the core expertise cannot be ruled out. They cannot be. If you're doing that, number crunches cannot solve the problems. Trust me. Even after 20, 30 years, we see surprises and we change our thought patterns. Yeah. So deployment of the automation is what it is going to do is it's going to fast track the delivery. It is going to fast track the delivery, and a lot of wasted man hour can be productively used in elsewhere. But with the automation comes also the impact on the job prospect of the people. People can be trained to run the automation. So you cannot just let it be handled by a machine, and machine says that, okay, do this, close this well now. Do you do that? I don't think anybody would do that. They will have a look at it. They will use their brain, which is the best computer that we have in the industry. And that is where they will take a decision. So it's not that the automation means people are going to go out. People have to be reoriented, trained in a different manner. Yes. So automation has to be guided by the subject matter experts. So be a subject matter expert, but at the same time, get involved with the technology. That is the way to go. Better utilization, I've just spoken about it. Digital oil fields. I mean, digital oil fields are not new. They've been there for a long, long time, but they have also gone through sea change in the technology process. So digital oil fields, how they are best utilized, how that is adding values to the uh, to the working pattern or the reservoir management. This is where the goal lies, you know. But it has to be just by deploying a hardware. It doesn't mean that you have a digital. Yes, you have a digital oil field, but it doesn't add value unless it is steered well. It's like a expensive car, and you do not know how to use the controls, then it's gone. Production decision algorithms. So this is what I was talking about. The use it with the data analytics. Decision comes up from the machine, but then that has to be reassessed by less number of people in between, reassessed and deployed. So you have a faster decision, seamless decision, and effective decision. Now, these are certain points. Actually, I can go on and on and on. Actually, I have many slides after I finish it, and that goes into too much of a detail. It's not probably right at this kind of a forum, but I have mentioned something because just to be uh, doing honors to the Petroleum Engineers Association and the geoscientists here, and the core aspect of their functions, I have to mention certain things about the upstream industries where we look at developing things. Modeling softwares, there are, as I was speaking to you about, the cheaper options are there, plugins are there, small developers are there. Why not have a look at them? They are dirt cheap compared to the big ones. AI driven workflows, cognitive interpretation tools. So everything is making it fast in terms of the time scale. How much of clarity it is giving is not much different, except that these also have to be guided and seen, overseen by the humans. Petrophysical geomechanical tools, probably if you do not need, why do you need? When the, as I said, the food example, you have too much of food, so you don't bother. But now it's a time to organize the backyards, whether we need it or not. Why do we need it so much? The system analyst can say that how much is the usage of those so many licenses per day. So accordingly, we can derive. Well data acquisition, I have already spoken. Must do, then give justification, do it. If we do not have that kind of a justification, don't do it. Drilling will continue, albeit with a little bit of reduced activities and revised action plans, but it will keep on continuing. It is the main thing through which we can explore and develop. Workover operations, it is not going to change much because it is not going to have big impact by changing that or reducing that. It is going to be detrimental actually. So for the health of the wells, we have to continue with that. Production and development part of it, lots of innovative tracer applications have come up where they have this single well tracer, partition tracers, and all that kind of things. I'm not an expert on tracers, but for heavy oil, you have the gas tracers, steam tracers. So you have different kind of tracer applications by which you can map the reservoir connectivity better or find out about the water zones and things like that. So it's a different ball game, but those are the things to come up, rather than just going through the production log, PLT runs every 6 months, every year. We should probably deploy these kind of things. Reservoir damage assessment, it's a big area which is pretty much overlooked by many of the operators because they think the reservoir is in the good health conditions. It's not. There are a lot of contaminants which are coming even during production of the oil and the water. And first we damage it with the muds that we use while drilling, then the completion brine, things like that. So reservoir gets damaged. if they get damaged, means whatever investment you're doing in terms of, say, water injection, the effectiveness is less, or any kind of stimulation you're doing, that's also effectively less impact. So what happens? The fallout is that your production is less than it can if you assess it properly. So completion design, whether what sort of completion, not just okay, that will had this and we copy paste this into the new well, it doesn't work like that. So the technical uh, plan, the process change has to happen everywhere. What I'm talking about, there has to be a rethinking on the process. Once you rethink the process, many things you can optimize. Shut off technologies, there are new technologies with nanoparticles and all that. Industry should is already looking at it, and this is something which can be taken up. So I've just mentioned few of these. Now the research and development, I think the smaller companies cannot do that. The technology developers who do that, or the big IOCs and NOCs, they have the research departments, they can do that. So typically you look at a 5-year plan, but you need to start on different aspects. If I start now, it may take 1 to 3 years to grow into a concept and pilot it. And then by fourth or fifth year, you can launch it and see the findings. So this cannot stop. This is another area which cannot stop. And these do not cost a lot of money. I mean, you consider drilling a well, uh, say 15,000 feet or 5,000 meters well. One well cost probably can uh, serve the purpose of the whole operator company's studies related budget, analytical process related budget, the research and development budget easily, just one well. So if I can optimize one well, I can support this, because these are very important aspects which can add value in the production, in the discoveries, more discovery, adding reserves, and also deploying new technologies. Well, everything I have already spoken. This is a slide which I created. Uh, More effort needs to be focused, taking advantage of the current scenario. Because when the scarcity comes, people get innovative. It's everywhere. It's in the animal kingdom. The scarcity is there, they get innovative. New oil in old fields. So this is kind of looking back into the old data. For example, David, there is a whole lot of well cuttings which are present in most of the exploration wells. Other than the mud logging company doing those well cutting data on the well side, what happens to those cuttings? Nobody looks at those. But technology has yielded some kind of equipments and the process which can look at that cutting much more deeply, like reservoir properties can be found out from those cuttings, like NMR and MICP, the geochemistry, very confidently. And they have been benchmarked against core plugs. So the revisiting the old data that you have in hand is a good thing to do. That's a process change. Relook at the old gaps. We have left a lot of gaps probably. In fact, we should question ourselves: did I do lose? I mean, given did I have some gap in my thought process, in my process itself? Did I not look at any kind of components? It's always good to do. We always leave gaps. There are loopholes. Reassess what is potential and accordingly prioritize. Right opportunity to invest where it is needed. Just that process has to be done. Especially in the studies, analysis, and research, which are low budget, which I already told you, an example of one well cost and vis-a-vis the whole year cost of these three things. They have to continue. You cannot stop them.